Greetings, Dungeon Delvers and fellow DMs, and welcome back to the DM's Den. Continuing forward in our 5th edition Fundamentals series, now that we have analyzed your different ability attributes, we know how to generate those scores. Now we're going to take a cursory glance at all of the races that you have available to you to choose from the core player's handbook. It should be noted that this is a cursory glance at each one, just giving you a little bit of flavor to better inform your decision-making process. In terms of the specific attributes, features, and other cool stuff about each race, those will be in subsequent videos. This is just to give you a little bit of information to pique your interest to see which one you might be leaning toward. Cool? Okay, let's get right into it. When talking about races, I will lump them into two categories, common and uncommon. Common races are prevalent in the world, especially the world of D&D, but also fantasy tropes in general and fantasy worlds. These are races that you see a lot in fantasy, so they've become rather normal. Uncommon races are more rare or more specialized, especially to the world of Dungeons & Dragons. And in the world itself, the physical world where the game exists, they should be more uncommon. You will see less of them. That's both for story elements and for balance mechanics, and we'll get to that. So going into common races, we have 4 races. First off, Dwarves. Dwarves are short but stocky, so they're not considered small, they just have shorter legs. They are sturdy folk. When I think of a dwarf, I think of stone, gold, mining, strong, stout. They are very fond of their gold, fond of their ale, but they're not greedy or mischievous, not these conniving people. They are a bit more honor-bound, but they do hold grudges, long grudges, because they are much longer lived with other creatures. Speaking of other creatures, elves. Elves and dwarves do not usually get along. Now, it doesn't have to be this amazing hate where I'm going to totally murder that elf who's in my party. It's just this underlying surface-level distrust. And that could be very helpful for RP. An elf is taller, more graceful, a lot more dexterous, a bit of a higher society, a lot of high learning with elves, and they are much more removed from the prevalence of humans. They don't have to be human. They kind of look at humans with a bit of distance. I think of them more akin to like the Vulcan state of mind as opposed to the human state of mind. They are less emotional and much more logic-based, education-based, and that's mostly their society. They tend to be also a lot more in tune to nature, magic, and those types of things. They will have special racial qualities that aid them in magical abilities. Halflings. Halflings, if you want a major comparison, think of a hobbit, but a halfling is separate and a hobbit is trademarked, so don't do that. Don't really say that out loud. But a halfling is a brave creature. They are also shorter, they're smaller, especially than a dwarf. A dwarf may have shorter legs, but they are still considered a medium creature because they are hardy and strong. A halfling is just a smaller frame. This makes them very good for being roguish type archetypes or just being fast on their feet. They are very brave. They are also dexterous and have other really cool abilities. They're very flexible in that way. But consider halfling brave. They may be small, they may look small, may look weak, but they're not. They can be strong, powerful warriors that have a very good sense of homeland, of protecting their home, of protecting those around them, and they are very, very brave. Humans are, in terms of their abilities, kind of boring, but they're supposed to be. A human is good at everything. And you'll find that in the more in-depth descriptions in the later videos. Humans, their bonuses that they get are very clear, and they make it so they are good in any class. They make it so there is no one class that they cannot be, because they are good at everything, and that makes them very common. We're kind of boring that way, but it makes it So our backgrounds, our role-playing opportunities are a lot more based upon us as players than just the flavor of our race, which is cool. Now, uncommon races. We start with the Dragonborn. Now, the Dragonborn, the big iconic thing with the Dragonborn, we're looking at a human, medium-sized humanoid type creature, but with scales everywhere. They have a bit more snout face, longer face, and they are descendants basically of certain dragon types. And that ties into one of their major features, which is the breath weapon. So even if you have a Dragonborn who is unarmed, they can still breathe fire, acid, cold, lightning on your face. And depending on the dragon that they choose to become a descendant of, the range of their breath weapon could be different. You've got several that are a 15-foot cone, and then others that are a 5 by 30-foot line that pop out of their face. And that can be pretty nuts. It also increases its damage as they get stronger, as their level increases. It's just something to think about, DMs, that you may have a moment where everybody gets surprised and they're not near their weapons, but that Dragonborn is still armed because of their breath weapon. I'm not saying take it away, definitely not, because it's a really cool thing and players love it, especially younger players go, I can breathe fire? That's amazing! Don't take it away, just be aware of its presence. It can be a really cool character moment, and do not retcon it, do not impede it in some way, just be aware. That's why this is an uncommon race, because of that really cool ability, as well as many other neat features. After Dragonborn comes the Gnome. Gnomes are another one of those shorter races, so their speed is going to be a bit lower, just a little bit, by like about 1 square or 5 feet, just like the Dwarf or the Halfling. However, gnomes have a lot higher cunning. They tend to be able to disarm suspicion with jovial happiness and lighter mood. They tend to be able to be very versatile in that regard, in the way that they're just kind of happy, jovial characters that are rarely hostile, and they're not they don't feed upon their base emotions. Because of this, they're also a lot more in tune with nature and magic, which makes them very key elements in any party because of those bonuses. I've seen some really cool bards be gnomes, and that's just because they're naturally gifted toward that particular class because of their natural racial ability toward magic. It's cool. The next 2 races are considered hybrids, which means we're taking one other race and another race, and they got together, got busy, and had a kid, and that's this race. So the first one I'll talk about is the half-elf. The half-elf is pretty cool. They take some of the best traits of being human and some of the best traits of being elf and get the best of both worlds in that way. They don't quite get everything from both races, but they tend to be pretty good. They get some nice ability increases, and they get some very nice resistance to charm effects, just like the elves do. But they don't get a full package of either, and they have no sub-races because they're getting something from 2 different races. Same thing goes for the half-orc. If you want to be strong and powerful, you are in a class that really wants to hit hard, a half-orc is a pretty good bet. They tend to be rather savage, and they'll be looked upon a little like, oh man, that's a big guy. But half-orcs are a bit burlier. They're not a full-fledged orc. They're a bit more civilized than a regular orc. But you're taking the best of being human, so very flexible, very versatile, and being orc. Strong, savage, powerful. Don't necessarily have to be smart, but they can be, because of that human side especially. I've played many half-orcs. It's really fun, and they get wonderful bonuses to their attack abilities, and they can deal lots of damage if they're in a melee situation. It's really cool. Our final race to do a quick overview on is the tiefling. Tieflings have an infernal heritage. They tend to have pale red or even gray skin, like ash type skin, and they all have horns and a tail. They look like demons. Many of them have red eyes. You can decide specifically what kind of look you have, but you have a very demonic presence. You have an infernal heritage, and you were born out of a world of humans dealing with demons, and okay, now you have a demon race of people. But because of the rarity of that sort of joining, and the rarity of all these types of joinings, again, you are uncommon, you are exotic. That can be good or bad. You're also a little intimidating because you look kind of demonic. But these features give you special resistances, especially to fire, because of your infernal heritage. Even you have racial bonuses that help with magic. You have innate spell abilities because of that infernal heritage. It really does play a strong part in being a good spellcaster, but also in other classes too. It doesn't have to be just being a caster. Oh, you're tiefling, you must be a caster. I love that all these races, no matter what you pick, you could play anything. That's the beauty of Dungeons & Dragons. But it's up to you to make it work. So folks, that was just a quick overview of the common and uncommon races all in one video, just to give you some idea, some of the flavor of what those different races are, and hopefully inform your decision-making process when you're trying to figure out what race do I want to play. Up next is a more in-depth approach to each race broken down, starting with Dwarf and moving all the way down to Tiefling, to just give a stronger overview of all the different features, ability score increases, all the cool things that you get when you select a certain race. And then after that, we'll do the same thing with classes. We'll do a quick overview and then do each one broken down and do a bit of an analysis with each of those classes. So hopefully this was helpful to you. May your swords be sharp, your magic be potent, and your handy haversack very, very deep. Just don't throw your kitty in there. It's a bad plan. Bad plan. Don't do it. I know you're thinking about it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Stop it. I can see you thinking. Thanks everybody for tuning in to today's episode of the DM's Den. If you want to see other stuff, you can click the link right here, up here somewhere in the card underneath, over the fire. It's cooking right over the fire. Great. If you are a Facebook buddy, you can check me out on Facebook, where I have all my professional endeavors, not just this, in one place. And if you are rich and want to spend some of that wonderful money, because you just have too much of it, I am running a Patreon that you can totally visit right here. Anywho, thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful day, and please, game responsibly. Bye-bye now.